Hi, I'm Darlie. I was folding wedding favors at 2 a.m. alone in my apartment, thinking maybe, just maybe, this time they'd see me. But the next morning, I found $2,400 missing from my account. And at the wedding, I planned, paid for, and was never thanked for. My mother just smirked. She looked me in the eye, like it was nothing. How do you even begin to fight a betrayal that wears your last name? And worse, how long had they been erasing me before I even noticed? The morning air in Tacoma had a chill to it, the kind that hinted at the season shifting for good. I parked 2 blocks away from Langley Park Event Hall because, of course, the family spots were already taken. I didn't bother asking why. By now, I knew better. Inside the venue, everything was in motion. Florists tugging carts of hydrangeas, servers buzzing around with napkin bundles, the planner's assistant on her 3rd coffee already. And there I was, not listed on any official staff roster, yet somehow the one they all turned to for answers. Darlie, where's the welcome signage? Darlie, the chair count doesn't match the guest list. Darlie, did you confirm the DJ? A week ago in our family group chat, Mom had dropped a voice note. No discussion, no questions. Darlie, you'll handle all the pre-wedding logistics, of course. That was it. No one chimed in, not even Aileen. I replied with a casual, "Sure, I'll help where I can." And the conversation rolled on like I hadn't spoken. And now here I was, sleeves rolled, checking lists I didn't make but was expected to memorize. Aileen floated by in a silk robe, all blush and champagne. "You're a lifesaver," she said vaguely, not looking at me directly. She didn't need to. It was easier not to see the person cleaning up behind you. As I gave directions to the floral vendor about rearranging the table arch, a task I hadn't agreed to, but had to fix anyway, a guest brushed my shoulder lightly. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you with the vendor team? I'm trying to find the restroom." I paused. My mouth opened before I could stop it. "No, I'm not with them." She smiled politely and walked away, oblivious. My navy slacks and white blouse had felt appropriate when I left the house. Now they just made me look like staff. I caught my reflection in the glass door. The bun, the clipboard. It wasn't an outfit, it was a uniform, and no one had told me I was wearing it. By mid-morning, I was at the welcome table, sorting out name tags and seating cards. The table had Aileen and Russell's special day printed in gold. My name wasn't anywhere. I had designed that logo myself after work one night, fiddling in Canva while heating up frozen lasagna. 2 weeks ago, I'd stayed up past midnight printing those cards because Mom's printer was out of ink, and she didn't want to deal with Office Depot. When I asked if anyone else could help, she laughed. "You're good with paper stuff, Darlie. It's your thing." It wasn't. But saying no wasn't either. I folded linen napkins, relined candles, and fixed a typo on the Henderson's table card. Somehow, I became the last line of defense for everyone's oversight. Each time I turned around, someone needed something, and each time I delivered without being seen. "Darlie, could you take these baskets to the hotel front desk? Darlie, do you have extra pins for boutonnieres?" I did. I always did. My purse was a traveling emergency kit for problems I didn't cause, but was expected to solve. I caught my mother across the room, dressed immaculately, smiling with a kind of pride I'd never seen directed at me. She was talking to Aileen's future in-laws, hands gesturing with elegance, voice calm and poised. "She's really incredible," one of the women said. Marjorie touched her chest with mock humility. "Thank you. I've done a lot behind the scenes." Behind the scenes. I turned back to the guest list. One card was missing. Mine. There was no seat assigned for me. I found it tucked near the side, next to the utility exit, by the speaker wires. Technically, it was still with family, if you counted second cousins and divorced uncles who didn't remember your birthday. I bent down to adjust the centerpieces one last time, my knees cracking from hours on my feet. My back ached. My hands were dry from folding, taping, tying. As I set the final candle into place, a voice behind me, said what I knew had been true all along. "She's just here to make sure the food's on time, I think." I didn't turn around immediately, but I saw Aileen's face in the mirrored wall, smiling politely, not correcting them, not even flinching. That was when I realized I wasn't a guest at my sister's wedding. I was unpaid labor. The bridal suite smelled like hairspray, mimosas, and forced smiles. I sat at the corner of the long vanity table, quietly scrolling through the event checklist on my phone, checking off things no one asked me to be responsible for. But that I'd done anyway. Around me, Aileen and her bridesmaids giggled over makeup palettes and false lashes, voices rising and falling in little bursts of excitement. Russell popped his head in with a soft knock. "Brunch is ready, ladies." A chorus of "Yay!" followed, and they filtered out one by one, leaving behind a trail of perfume and half-zipped dress bags. I followed last, not because I was trying to be polite. I just didn't want to fight for a chair anymore. The spread in the private room was stunning. Quiche, smoked salmon, imported cheeses, berries cut into perfect spirals. Marjorie stood at the center of it all, directing a server to reposition a fruit bowl by exactly 4 inches. Classic. As I sat down, I heard one of the bridesmaids murmur, "Your mom must have hired the best wedding planner. This is unreal." Marjorie laughed, light, charming, effortless. "We had some help," she said, eyes not once landing on me. No correction, no glance, not even a nod in my direction. Weeks ago, I had wired $12,400 to what Mom called an event escrow to help cover unexpected venue upgrades and floral expansions that, of course, I hadn't suggested. At the time, I told myself I'd be reimbursed, or at the very least, acknowledged. Neither happened. And seeing the brunch now, linen napkins with gold foil initials, a private harpist in the corner, it made me wonder if my savings had paid for Aileen's ambiance. No one had even said, "Thank you." After brunch, we moved into the reception rehearsal area. The AV team was doing final checks on the slideshow that would play later that evening. I stood at the back, arms folded, watching as the screen flickered through early photos of Aileen and Russell. Prom night, their first apartment, vacation selfies. Then came the thank you segment. Names scrolled in elegant white over black. To our amazing vendors, to our parents, Marjorie and Tom Hartwell, to Russell's wonderful family. My name wasn't there. I stared at the screen, wondering if there had been a mistake, or maybe it was an oversight. I pulled out my phone and texted Aileen, "Hey, was my name supposed to be in the thank you section?" I watched her across the room as the message delivered. She glanced at her phone, read it, then slowly pressed the lock button. No reply. Just that same serene expression she wore in every engagement photo. How do you vanish from a moment you helped build? I stepped outside. The sky was a dull gray, low clouds pressing down on the city like a weight. It hadn't started raining yet, but you could feel it waiting. My phone buzzed again. It was a payment confirmation from the rental company. Final invoice for the custom glassware had gone through. My card, my money, my silence. I leaned against the brick wall, cold seeping through my dress sleeves. I remembered filling the wedding favor bags in my apartment 2 nights ago. Plastic bins stacked taller than my couch, ribbons scattered across the floor. Each bag had a sticker that read, "From the Hartwell family, with love." I thought about that phrase. Family. And yet, in every slide, every speech, every corner of this wedding, my presence was treated like a service, not a contribution. Inside, Marjorie was giving instructions to the AV team, pointing out transitions and timing. Her voice carried with ease and command. "Make sure the flower vendor's name is bold," she said, "and list Chef Aaron's name next to the hors d'oeuvres shots. He deserves to be recognized." I looked down at my hands, still slightly stained with ink from assembling escort cards until 2 in the morning. My fingers were raw, one nail cracked from tying so many bows. I don't need a spotlight, but I deserve a name. The back office at Langley Park was quiet for once, aside from the hum of the vending machine and the occasional shuffle of papers. It was 11 a.m., just a few hours before the ceremony. I sat in a hard plastic chair, staring at my phone screen while my thumb hovered over the email app. The rental company had just sent another confirmation. The specialty bar glassware, the upgraded table linens, the floral arch extension, all finalized, all paid. By me. I hadn't asked anyone to cover these expenses. I just assumed that once the dust settled, someone would acknowledge it. That maybe I'd hear a simple, "Hey, thanks for handling that." But no one did. The silence had become its own language. I opened my banking app, not out of worry, just habit at this point. But something pulled me into my email drafts folder. A file titled marjoriepolicy.pdf sat there, partially downloaded. It was my mother's life insurance paperwork from years ago. I hadn't thought about it in a decade. Back then, we were all reeling from Dad's sudden passing. Mom had asked me to help fill out her documents. I remembered the pen she used, blue gel with a slight smudge where she signed. I remembered reading the part that said I'd be the beneficiary. Now, as the PDF loaded fully, I scanned it quickly. My name was gone. Replaced. Aileen Hartwell. 100%. No co-beneficiaries. No contingency line. Just her. The bride. The golden one. My body didn't react right away. It was as if my brain was buffering, trying to catch up to what it already understood. I leaned back, phone still in my lap, staring at the cheap ceiling tiles overhead. How much of me had been quietly erased while I was too busy showing up? The answer came in a memory. 2 weeks ago, a casual family dinner, takeout from the Italian place down the street. Mom was on speaker, talking about final wedding logistics. "Sweetheart," she had said, her voice all syrup and spin, "you live alone. Why do you need savings? This is your sister's time." The room had laughed. Even I had managed a chuckle, because it's easier to laugh when everyone else is smiling. It's easier to pretend it's harmless when it slices just below the skin. But now, with the policy in front of me and $12,400 of my money gone into floral fantasies and glassware no one would remember, the humor dried up fast. It wasn't just that one comment. It never is. It was every time she'd said, "You've got time," or "You're so good at giving," or "You don't need much." 1,000 little phrases that told me what I had wasn't worth protecting. I opened my calendar app next. It looked like a battlefield. Back-to-back freelance shifts, last-minute gigs, late-night setups. The entire past 3 months were colored in stress gray. I'd skipped 2 birthdays, canceled a girls' trip, and rescheduled a dentist appointment 4 times. All for this wedding. I told myself it was for family. That one day, they'd look back and say, "She made this happen." But the only thing I seemed to make was myself small. I looked at the text alerts again. Each line a transaction, a deduction. There was something almost clinical about it. Like reading your own autopsy. Love doesn't keep receipts. Theft does. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting that thought settle like dust on the shelves. A knock at the door broke the silence. I startled slightly before hearing Aileen's voice from the hallway. "Darlie? Mom says the Hendersons moved tables. Can you check the seating?" I folded the insurance policy and slid it into my purse, along with everything else I'd swallowed without protest. "I'm on it," I called back, voice even, calm. But inside, a shift had started, small, steady, irreversible. It was just past noon, and guests had started to settle into their seats beneath the crisp October sun. The ceremony chairs, draped in soft ivory fabric, looked flawless. A violinist played something classical that I couldn't name, but had probably heard 100 times in rom-coms. I stood quietly behind a row of shrubs, pretending to double-check my clipboard, even though everything on it had already been done. It gave me something to hold, something to hide behind. My phone buzzed. At first, I thought it might be another vendor running late, or someone asking where the Unity candles had gone. But it wasn't that. The screen glowed with a notification from my banking app. "You've transferred $2,400 to Marjorie H." I didn't move, not right away. The air changed around me. The music faded into static. I felt the warmth leave my hands first, then my face. A hollow kind of buzzing took over, somewhere between panic and disbelief. I double-checked the time. 12:07 p.m. I hadn't touched my phone in over an hour. Still gripping it like it might dissolve, I ducked out of view and slipped through the side entrance of the venue. The service hallway was empty, cold, and dimly lit. I leaned against the wall and opened the app. Access logs. Biometric confirmation. Fingerprint. Time-stamped during the ceremony. My device. My account. My mother. I stared at it for a long time, then whispered aloud to no one. She wouldn't. No, she would. I took screenshots of everything. The log, the transaction, the confirmation email. I forwarded them all to my backup account and added one line in the subject. In case I disappear. I reset the login pin, locked my phone, and stood there breathing shallow for what felt like an hour. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I fixed my dress, pulled my shoulders back, and walked out like nothing had happened. Back on the lawn, the crowd rose for Aileen as she made her way down the aisle, glowing and adored. My mother stood near the archway, dabbing her eyes with a tissue like she'd just watched a Disney movie. She looked serene, pleased, victorious. The ceremony itself blurred by. I couldn't hear the vows, couldn't feel the breeze anymore. I only saw my hands in my lap, still, empty, and recently robbed. Once the applause died down and guests began migrating toward the cocktail reception, I made my way to the floral staging room behind the ballroom. Marjorie was already inside, adjusting a bouquet like it might cost her reputation if a petal fell. "Did you just take money from me?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. She turned slowly, meeting my eyes with the calm of someone who never doubted she'd win. "If I did," she said, tucking a loose curl behind her ear, "what would you do? Ruin your sister's day?" She walked past me, gently brushing my elbow in that faux maternal way she reserved for guests she didn't really like. The kind of touch that looked warm but felt like frostbite. I swallowed the nausea climbing my throat. "Not today," I said quietly, "but don't get comfortable." Her smile didn't fade, but she paused at the doorway just long enough to let me know she heard every word. I stayed in the room for a few more minutes, alone. There was a mirror hanging above the floral table, and I caught my reflection mid-breath. Not crying, not shaking, just still. There was a wildness behind my eyes I hadn't seen before. Not fear, not grief. Focus. Back in the reception area, the music had shifted to something light and jazzy. People milled around the champagne table, chatting about how beautiful the ceremony had been. I picked up a flute of sparkling rosé and held it to the light. Then I pulled out my phone and opened a new text. To myself. She really did it. I hit send. Then raised my glass and whispered, "Watch me now." The reception was well underway, the kind of buzzed chatter and clinking glass that made everything seem normal from the outside. I stood just beyond the crowd, near the backstage lounge, sipping flat champagne that tasted like sour apology. The band played something jazzy and unmemorable. I hadn't noticed the lyrics. I wasn't really listening. That's when I heard Aileen's voice. Not loud, but clear enough to sting. "She's just incredible. Mom made this whole wedding happen," she told one of our cousins, her hand casually gesturing toward the decor, like she hadn't watched me tape candle holders with raw fingertips 3 nights in a row. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight over and touched her elbow. Firm, but not enough to cause a scene. "You knew?" I said, low and measured. "You knew she took that money from me." Aileen blinked. Then her expression softened into something between pity and public grace. "Darlie, don't do this. Not now." "She drained my account," I replied. "Without asking. You let her." Her smile barely shifted. "It's one day. Don't make it about you." That landed harder than a slap. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I turned around mid-conversation and walked away like she hadn't just pulled the floor out from under me. That phrase had followed me my whole life. spoken, implied, or packaged in a joke. Don't make it about you. It had become the family anthem, one I never sang along with, but somehow danced to anyway. Down the hallway, I stopped under the sconce light and opened my phone. In the Notes app, I created a new draft titled, "If I Ever Forget Again." I wrote down every instance, every moment where I'd been erased, talked over, dismissed. Every time someone said "we," but didn't include me. At the bottom, I typed one last line, "I'm not asking anymore." Then I saved it and locked the screen. That's when Marjorie passed me, her perfume arriving 2 seconds before she did. She didn't stop, but she glanced sideways with that polished smirk of hers. "You'll understand someday," she said, as if reciting a lullaby. "We don't steal in this family, we redistribute." I turned to face her full on. "I'm not part of that we anymore." She didn't flinch. She just kept walking. But I saw it. The way her jaw tensed just for a moment. That was enough. Back in the small prep room that had unofficially become my base camp, I sat down on the velvet stool and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyeliner had smudged. My lipstick had faded. But my eyes, they were sharp now, awake. I reapplied my makeup slowly, deliberately, every stroke a declaration. "You will never be small for them again," I whispered to my own reflection. I took off my heels and swapped them for flats. Not because I was tired, but because I was done performing. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out the flash drive. Black, plastic, ordinary. On it, screenshots, timestamps, bank logs. Proof. I slid it into the inner zipper pocket of my clutch. I wasn't planning to use it tonight, but it was there, and so was I. That made all the difference. When I stepped into the reception ballroom again, everything looked the same. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, guests toasted with laughter and rosé. But something had shifted, inside me. The lights caught the shimmer of my bare arms. I didn't feel exposed. I felt armored. I lifted my glass in a silent toast, smiled just enough to confuse them, and thought, let's see how they like the spotlight. Golden hour stretched across the garden patio, casting warm light on lavender table runners and champagne flutes waiting to be lifted. The photographer had started calling groups, bridesmaids, groomsmen, extended family, each one posing in curated joy, their smiles choreographed to match the sunlight. I stood near the steps with my clipboard, pretending to check the order of events, though I knew it by heart. I'd built the timeline, literally. Eventually, I assumed I'd hear someone say, "Let's get the Hartwell family," and I'd be motioned over. That never happened. I watched as the photographer adjusted his lens, then raised his arm and gestured toward the main set of chairs. Marjorie was already seated, her posture perfect. She tapped the bench beside her. I stepped forward, instinct, not thought. But then I saw her hand beckon to our cousin's wife instead. My feet stopped moving before my mind caught up. Aileen was radiant in the center, her smile soft and polished, like it had been rehearsed. She leaned into Marjorie, one arm behind Russell. Picture perfect. I wasn't called. I wasn't asked. I wasn't even glanced at. Instead, I faded backward, away from the frame, and stood behind a column where no one could mistake me for part of it. Not even me. After the photos were taken, I stepped aside and watched as the photographer scrolled through the shots on his screen. Marjorie leaned in, whispered something, then pointed. He nodded and tapped the delete icon on a single frame. The one I had unintentionally wandered into while helping move a centerpiece earlier. I kept my face still, but something inside me crumpled in slow motion. Later, as I walked through the reception hall, guests beginning to trickle in, laughter starting to bounce off the high ceiling, I passed the head table. That's when I noticed it. My name card, tucked at the far corner of a side table. Darlene. Not Darlie. Darlene. A mistake, maybe. Or maybe not. Meanwhile, Aileen's place setting glowed, her name embroidered into the cloth napkin, The kind of detail that gets posted on Pinterest and praised by strangers online. I picked up my napkin and turned it over. Nothing, just cloth. No name, no trace of me. I didn't fix it. I didn't ask anyone to. I just walked on. Inside, the reception had fully launched. Champagne flowed. Guests laughed. The lighting dimmed to that perfect Instagram hue. Then came the toasts. Marjorie took the mic, standing tall with a practiced grace. "I want to thank everyone who helped bring this beautiful day to life," she said. "Our amazing vendors, our floral team, the venue staff, and of course, Aileen and Russell." Applause. Glasses raised. She continued, listing names, first names, full names, people who showed up for 2 hours and got recognition like they'd orchestrated the whole thing. She never said mine. I sat at my assigned table, corner seat, next to someone's great aunt, who kept calling me the girl with the clipboard. My plate sat untouched. I didn't eat. I didn't toast. I finished my drink instead, quietly, then set the empty glass in front of the full plate like punctuation. The camera clicked again from across the room. Another moment captured. Another frame I wouldn't be in. I glanced at the photo booth on my way out to catch some air. Marjorie stood in front of it, with Aileen and Russell, arm in arm, beaming. That image, already etched in her mind, probably destined for a canvas print by Tuesday. I paused at the edge of the doorway, opened my purse, and felt for the flash drive I'd slipped in earlier that day. The one with the bank logs, screenshots, receipts. It was still there. For the first time that day, I smiled. Not because I felt happy, but because I finally understood. You don't need to be in the picture to know you were part of what built it. I slipped away during dessert. The noise in the ballroom had risen to that humming level of clinks and low conversation. Just enough cover for me to disappear without anyone noticing. The staff room at the back of the venue was dark and quiet. A few coats hung on the rack, untouched. I sat in the corner, opened my laptop, and connected to the venue's Wi-Fi. The signal was weak, but it held. I clicked open the encrypted folder I'd labeled Receipts. Inside, I had everything: bank statements, screenshots, login records. But what I found next shifted something in me permanently. My banking app had a security log I hadn't reviewed in full. I opened it, scrolling past the usual device names, my iPhone, my work laptop, until I saw it. iPad Marjorie H. Logged in 3 days ago. IP address, her home network. She hadn't just used my phone. She had accessed my account from her own device, at home, while I was working late one night to pay off the balance on the flowers she accidentally upgraded. I stared at the screen for a long time. No emotion on my face. Just a cool, controlled sort of silence. Then I downloaded the log, uploaded it to my backup drive, and added it to the flash drive sitting in my purse. My fingers didn't tremble. They had before. Not anymore. When I returned to the main room, the champagne tower had started to lean, and the toasts were winding down. Russell found me by the coat check. He didn't look surprised to see me standing alone. "Hey," he said cautiously. "Look, I don't want to get in the middle, but just for tonight, maybe we can all take a breath? It's her wedding." I looked at him for a second before responding. "Tell her to enjoy it. I'll take care of tomorrow." He blinked. It was the kind of answer that sounded polite on the surface, but something in my tone made him step back. I walked past him without another word, calm but deliberate. Back into the crowd, back into the music, back into the show. By the time I made it to my table, my phone buzzed again. A message from an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Just got forwarded this, thought you should see." Attached was an email chain, subject: Behind the scenes, I did all I could. It was from Marjorie, sent to Aileen's new in-laws. The wording was elegant, measured, manipulative. I tried to support Darlie, but she's been unpredictable lately. Lots of emotional pressure. I don't think she handles responsibility well, especially under stress. I've done my best to shield Aileen from the drama, but sometimes She signed it with her signature phrase, "Family first, always." I forwarded it to myself, saved the file, and added it to the folder. No rage, no panic, just proof. I was done trying to be heard. I was done trying to be understood. I was documenting now. Quietly. Precisely. The music shifted into something upbeat. Guests laughed louder. The lights dimmed slightly as the MC called for everyone's attention. It was time for the bouquet toss. I stayed near the back of the room, arms folded, watching Aileen take her place center stage. She turned, grinned for the cameras, and tossed the bouquet high into the air. It landed somewhere near the bridesmaids. I didn't move. I wasn't there to catch anything that night. But I knew, when this whole story caught up with them, I wouldn't be the one left holding nothing. The ballroom lights dimmed just enough to make everything look expensive. Guests had settled into their third round of champagne, bellies full of steak and compliments. Post-dinner toasts were queued up like polite ammunition. I sat at table 14, technically a family table, though no one sitting there shared my blood or seemed interested in doing so. Marjorie stepped onto the stage, her sequined dress catching every drop of light as if it owed her something. She smiled like a woman giving a TED Talk, not a toast. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," she began. "It takes vision to plan a day like this. Commitment, sacrifice." She talked about how Aileen had always been her shining light, how Russell was already family the day she met him. She listed the vendors by name, praised the hotel staff, even gave a nod to the valet team for handling unexpected traffic with grace. My name didn't make it into her vision, not even as a footnote. As the applause started, I stood. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to gather attention without shouting. I didn't head for the mic, I headed for the coat room. Inside, it smelled like old perfume and dusted wool. I opened my email. There it was, fresh from Colby, a high school friend who now managed vendor contracts for the event company. "Thought you might need this," his message said. Attached, a PDF of all signed service agreements. Every contract bore one signature, Marjorie Hartwell. Mine appeared nowhere. Not even on the design work I'd done, not even as an emergency contact. I downloaded it, forwarded it to my backup email, then walked down the hall to the concierge. 2 printed copies later, I stood in front of a mirror near the restroom and smoothed my dress. I didn't need a speech, I needed proof. Walking back toward the ballroom, I didn't notice Marjorie until she stepped into my path like she'd been waiting for this moment. "You look tense," she said, eyes glinting. "What's the plan? Cry during the first dance?" I tilted my head slightly. "I'm not the one who should be nervous." Her face didn't change much, but enough. She leaned in, lowered her voice like it was a bedtime story. "You're alone, single, no children, no husband, no clout. They'll believe me." I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. "We'll see." I walked past her, straight to the AV booth. The DJ was young, early 20s maybe. Looked like he still lived with his parents. He smiled until he saw my face. "Hi," I said calmly. "If anything happens to me or my bank account in the next 72 hours, send this envelope to every email on this list." He took it slowly, nodding as if he already knew this was important. Then I returned to the reception. No mic, no confrontation. Just me, a cocktail, and a chair by the dance floor. The safest place in the room was the eye of the storm, and I was sitting right in it. Aileen was laughing with her college friends, oblivious. Russell poured wine for someone's aunt. Marjorie floated from table to table, radiant in her delusion. The bouquet toss was announced. Women gathered behind the bride, some in heels, some barefoot, all pretending not to care too much. I stayed seated. The flowers flew. They landed somewhere. People clapped. I lifted my glass to no one. "Let's see who blinks first," I whispered. The chandeliers above looked like they were made of sugar glass, delicate, glittering, moments away from collapse. The band had transitioned to their last jazz set, the crowd loose and warm from dessert wines. It was the kind of evening people would call perfect. picturesque, until the silence was broken by something louder than sound. I stood just outside the ballroom, my back pressed against the wallpapered corridor, holding my phone. I took one last breath, then hit send. Subject: Hartwell Wedding. Payment clarification. Attached: PDFs of the contracts, screenshots of my drained account, and the log showing Marjorie's device accessing my bank app. The message went out to every person who needed to see it. Aileen's in-laws, our extended family, every vendor who ever gave my mother credit that belonged to me. Seconds later, I heard it. The collective ping of phones lighting up across the ballroom. It started like a ripple. Heads tilted down, brows furrowed, conversations halted mid-sentence. I walked back inside, slow and steady, holding a fresh glass of water like it was champagne. I passed 3 cousins whispering near the dessert table, each gripping their phones like lifelines. I didn't make eye contact. I didn't need to. Aileen stood at the far end, her arm looped around Russell's. Her smile faltered as she read. Her posture stiffened. Then she looked up, straight at me. She didn't say anything, but her eyes asked every question. One of Russell's aunts crossed the room and stopped beside me. Her tone wasn't harsh, just stunned. "This is real?" I nodded once. No explanation, no apology. My phone vibrated again. "You have been removed from Hartwell family chat." No message, no warning, just erased. As if deleting me from a group thread could undo the truth. I let the screen dim and dropped the phone into my clutch. A cut that clean didn't hurt. Not right away. It was surgical, cold, final. Then came Marjorie. She moved through the room like a ghost with teeth, her heels clicking sharper than the band's snare drum. She stopped inches from me, fury tucked beneath her lipstick. "You ruined your sister's wedding!" she hissed, voice low enough to keep the cameras away, but loud enough to shake glass. I didn't raise mine. I held it steady. I looked her in the eye. "No, I clarified who paid for it." Her jaw twitched. She opened her mouth, but for once, she didn't have a script. Around us, guests were gathering their coats, suddenly remembering babysitters, early flights, or just choosing not to pretend anymore. The facade cracked, not in a shout or a scene, but in the quiet way people begin to walk away when something rotten is finally exposed to air. Marjorie stayed frozen. Aileen hadn't moved either. I turned and stepped outside. The cool air felt like water on scorched skin. The music from inside was muffled now, fading beneath the night's stillness. I looked up at the stars, breathed deeply, and let the silence settle. Finally, quiet. The first thing I noticed when I woke up wasn't the light bleeding through the blinds or the quiet hum of traffic outside my apartment. It was the red notification badge on my phone. 13 missed calls. Some from family, most from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't return a single one. My body felt like it had gone through a war. The wedding had ended hours earlier, but my bones held the memory like bruises. I moved slowly, careful with each step, as if the emotional weight might crack through my spine. There was one voicemail I knew I needed to listen to. It was from the bank that had pre-approved me for a modest condo near Green Lake. I had already planned where the bookshelves would go, had measured the corner for a reading chair I couldn't quite afford yet. "Hi, Miss Hartwell," the voice said, too upbeat for what came next. "I regret to inform you that based on updated activity on your account, we'll need to rescind the mortgage pre-approval at this time. The recent withdrawal impacted your debt-to-savings ratio." I didn't finish listening. The $12,400 Marjorie pulled hadn't just funded her fantasy. It had cost me a place to land. A future I was trying to build, one practical inch at a time. I sat at my kitchen table, stared at the mug I hadn't touched. Coffee had cooled. Everything felt stale, even the silence. Then I opened my laptop and emailed Tanya from the bank. She responded within the hour. "Yes," she said. The transaction had been verified. The IP address matched one registered to Marjorie Hartwell's home internet provider. The device name was saved in the security log, iPad Marjorie H. She attached the full documentation at my request. I printed every page. This wasn't revenge. This was recovery. On a yellow legal pad, I wrote across the top in bold ink, "This isn't about family. This is about theft." Under it, I listed IP logs, email chains, banking statements, vendor contracts. It wasn't drama, it was data. At noon, my phone buzzed with a simple text from Glenda, my aunt. She'd always been the quiet one, the one who smiled too gently and watched from the edges. "Saw the email. Proud of you. Let me know if you need anything." I stared at that message longer than I wanted to admit. Not because it hurt, but because it healed. That afternoon, I walked into a law firm near my apartment. No makeup, no high heels, just the leather tote with every printout I needed. I met with a junior associate named Clara, who looked about Aileen's age. She didn't ask why I wasn't smiling. She just asked for the files. "I'm not here to sue anyone yet," I said, "but I want the case opened, documented, recorded. If this ends up in court, I want to be 2 steps ahead." Clara nodded. "We'll start the process today." There was no anger in my voice, no drama in my posture, just purpose. Back home, I pinned the mortgage rejection letter on my fridge, not as shame, but as reminder. On my desk, I organized the legal pad, the bank printouts, the flash drive. No wedding photos on the shelves, no souvenirs from the weekend, just evidence. I placed each item into a labeled folder, slipped it into my tote. Then I stood for a moment, hands flat on the countertop, breathing. If they wanted silence, I whispered to myself, they should have left my money alone. It had been exactly 7 days since the wedding unraveled under chandeliers and filtered champagne. My apartment smelled like citrus and laundry soap, something clean, something lived in. The pile of documents on my dining table hadn't moved, but my chest felt different, less tight. The mail slipped through my door just after 5, mostly junk. A pizza coupon, a medical bill I was still ignoring, but tucked between them was a pale blue envelope with my name written in cursive I recognized immediately. Glenda. I sat on the edge of the couch, opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note. No punctuation, just thoughts that poured like breath. Some families break, some bend. You, my dear, stood still. I held that card like it weighed 100 pounds, because emotionally it did. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even trying to be. It was something better. Recognition. There'd been no call from Marjorie, no email from Aileen, just silence from their end. And somehow that quiet was the loudest sound in my life right now. The following morning, my phone rang. It was Tanya from the bank. Calm as always. "Good news," she said. "The investigation is complete. The fraudulent withdrawal is confirmed. The funds will be returned to your account within 5 to 7 business days." I closed my eyes. I didn't say thank you right away. "It's not about the money," I told her after a pause. "It's about having my name back." She understood more than I expected. Later that afternoon, I picked up groceries and stopped by the bookstore cafe near my street. I hadn't planned to stay, but the smell of espresso and the quiet energy of people typing made me pull out my laptop. As I waited for my order, I opened the envelope from Glenda again. Tucked inside was a small photo of the wedding invitation I'd designed. The same one Marjorie had told everyone she commissioned from a graphic artist. On the back of the photo, Glenda had written, "No one else had the eye for detail like you. Thank you." That was the moment I knew I wasn't alone. Not entirely. A young woman at the next table glanced at the sticker on my laptop. "Event people do it backstage," it read. She grinned. "That's clever." I actually laughed. Not out of politeness. It came from somewhere real. "I used to live backstage," I said, "but I've got a better view now." She smiled and turned back to her screen. I opened a blank document, typed the title in bold, "How to Set a Boundary and Keep It." The words didn't come fast, but they came. This chapter of my life wasn't about cutting people off. It was about choosing who earned access. Family could be born or built, and I'd finally stopped mistaking proximity for love. As the cafe started to fill, the sunlight spilled in through the wide front windows, hitting my table like a quiet spotlight. I didn't feel exposed. I felt seen. By the right people, in the right way. Not everything was healed, but I was awake. It was a Sunday morning in late November, the kind of cold that didn't announce itself, but slid quietly into your sleeves. The sky hung low and gray, spitting a fine mist that had no intention of stopping. I didn't bring an umbrella. I didn't zip my coat. I walked through downtown Tacoma like someone who didn't need shielding anymore. The sidewalks were mostly empty. A few bundled-up runners passed by. A woman with a stroller hustled across the crosswalk ahead of me. I slowed down as I approached the corner near the old bookstore cafe. Rain started to fall heavier, soaking into my collar. I could feel it trace along my scalp, down the back of my neck. A man passing in the opposite direction stopped for a moment, lifted his umbrella toward me. "You okay?" he asked, half smiling. "Want some cover?" I smiled back, but didn't stop. "No thanks," I said. "I'm used to the rain." And I was. Maybe not just this kind, the wet Pacific Northwest drizzle, but the other kind. The kind that seeps into the quiet places in your life when people you love take and tell you it's for the good of the family. I'd been waiting for someone to offer shelter for a long time. But now I didn't flinch. I pushed open the cafe door, the bell overhead ringing softly. The barista knew me by now. Black coffee, no room. I paid in cash, took the steaming cup to a corner table by the window, and pulled a napkin from the dispenser. I didn't think too hard before I started writing. No apology needed. I closed that door myself. I folded the napkin, slid it into a blank envelope I'd been carrying in my bag for days. On the front, I wrote Marjorie's name. No address, no stamp. I wasn't planning to send it. It was just something I needed to do, for me. Back at home, the apartment was warm and quiet. The kind of quiet I used to mistake for loneliness, but now I understood it as freedom. I changed into dry clothes, poured the coffee into a mug, and sat down at my desk. The wedding folder still sat in the corner, next to my legal pad, next to the flash drive I didn't need anymore. Not for court, anyway. But I'd keep it. Let the past stay documented. I opened my freelance website, clicked into the bio section. The line that read, "Part of a proud family legacy of event design," got deleted. I typed instead, "Built on my own." Then I scrolled to my financial dashboard. A green banner blinked. Funds received. The stolen money had been returned. My name restored. I opened another tab. My mortgage lender's site. Same property, same listing. This time I clicked Apply. Just me. No co-signers. No second opinions. Beside the confirmation screen, I opened a new project file. Blank canvas, muted header, soft palette. A redesign of my own brand. My name in the top left corner, unshared. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and placed the envelope with the napkin on the counter. No drama, just closure. I watched the rain from my window, droplets streaking down the glass. My reflection shimmered between them, blurred but steady. "I was never meant to fit in," I whispered to the empty room. "I was meant to break out." Sometimes the people you expect to protect you are the ones who cross the line the quietest. And when they do, you have two choices. Let it shape you into someone smaller, or let it push you into someone unshakably real. For me, the turning point wasn't the money. It was realizing how long I had accepted invisibility in the name of family. What I've learned, and what I want you to take from this, is that peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from reclaiming your voice, even if it shakes the ground you've stood on your whole life. Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting. It requires boundaries. And you don't owe anyone your silence when they've stolen your worth. Have you ever had to draw a line with family? Have you ever been erased from your own story and had to write it back in? If this story resonated with you, even just a little, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't speak to you, I'd still love to hear why. Stories like these are meant to start conversations, not end them. If you'd like to hear more real-life stories about courage, healing, and standing up for yourself, especially when it's hardest, don't forget to hit subscribe and follow this channel. Your story matters too. Let's keep telling them together.